Awesome. All right. Today we are going to have a great conversation with Danny, owner of CrossFit Soul. I'm super pumped about this because what I was telling Miranda is I'm going to approach it from the point of, I just want to get to know you from the beginning. And then we'll get into where we're at today, which is super cool. I want people to get to know you for who you are and like what your evolution was in your life and your fitness, and how the two are going now, actually. So, and the fact that you're a father is huge. I've been interviewing the Street Parking Dads recently and getting to know them a little bit more for who they are, and so less about their fitness, which has been cool. So let the people know a little bit, who you are, how old are you, and where do you live, and then we'll go
right in.
We'll go in.
My name's Danny Soul. I'm 39 years old. I'm going to be 40 in October.
Nice.
Stressing a little bit.
Dang.
But yeah, nice. I'm a father, live in Miami, Florida. I own 2 gyms in South Florida. One is Team Soul Miami. The other one's Team Soul FTL in Broward County. The Miami gym has been open for 14 years now.
Dang.
Yeah, and the new gym, 2 years in Broward County.
So you're living in Miami. Have you always lived in Miami?
Born and raised.
Dude, wow.
Yeah, I'm one of the very few people who I've spent my whole life in Miami. I moved to Fort Lauderdale for like 2 years early in my life, and that's it. But the rest of my life has always been in Miami. Miami is very transient. I'm a first generation Cuban American.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother and I were the first people in our family born in the United States. My parents came from Cuba in their formative years. They met they met in Miami, got married in Miami. My brother and I were born, and yeah, we've never left.
So it's just you and your brother, no other siblings?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are you the older or younger?
I'm the older. My brother's 3 years younger than me.
Nice.
And he works for me, with me at Soul. He's like our general manager.
Wow.
He's the guy that like makes everything happen at Soul. Every logistic, everything that needs to be organized happens from him.
He's that side of it, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's special.
Yeah.
And given that you're in Miami now, how has Miami evolved since you've been there?
Tremendously, man. I mean, South Florida, Miami, people, I don't know that people understand this, but it's the swamp. It's the Everglades.
South Florida?
Yeah,
Dude,
completely. So like even when I was born in 84. And back when I was born, I came up in a hood in an area in Miami called Kendall,
mm-hmm.
and it was the swamp when I was born.
Yeah, because when I've been to Miami, I feel like, do you think people have just a perception that Miami is like
South
Beach?
Yeah.
What's outside of South Beach look like?
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. I'm sure we'll get into talking about this, but when endurance became a part of my life,
mm-hmm.
I ventured more into South Beach. Because the run on South Beach is beautiful.
Right.
My girl swims, so like we spend time on South Beach now a little bit, but I never went to South Beach growing up. That was not part of my existence. Downtown, very little as well. Miami's mostly the suburbs.
Wow.
So like everything you see on TV, all the GTA, Vice City, all big bright lights, that's not what my relationship is with Miami at all.
No.
My relationship with Miami is more of a suburban lifestyle with my Latin grandparents.
Dang.
Yeah. So like it's not uncommon to walk into a grocery store, a gas station, a restaurant, and not one person in there speaks English. Like that's
your culture, right?
That's my culture. That's my relationship with.
Given that you're Cuban, you said that you lived in the hood. What is like?
Well, I call it the island. Okay. Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod got in trouble once for calling Miami the hood or something like that. It's my hood.
Okay.
The hood.
I see. I see what you're saying. So, growing up with Cuban culture, let the people know what's different from Cuban culture than Mexican culture.
Our food is better. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't take offense.
I mean, my favorite food to eat is Cuban food.
Sure.
So like I stand by that heavy. I love my culture. I think big differences between like Mexican and Cuban culture is we are more Caribbean, more tropical leaning,
mm-hmm.
Our Spanish is very different than Mexican Spanish.
Very different.
Mexican Spanish sounds more proper, Cuban Spanish is pretty ghetto, pretty chopped up. It's very slang heavy.
Sure.
You know, it's pretty inappropriate. There's like very common use of words that would never be spoken in a Mexican culture. You know, so yeah, it's comparable, but it has a heavy Caribbean feel to it.
So growing up when you were going to school, was it just majority Cuban?
Yeah.
Or was there like Mexican culture there too? No.
When I was growing up, man, you know, we were just talking about this recently with like I mean, it's not recent, but the influx of Venezuelans coming into the United States right now, heavy in Miami. Growing up, I didn't know a single Venezuelan.
Wow.
Now I live in a house with all Venezuelans. My girlfriend is Venezuelan. Her mother is Venezuelan. Her daughter is Venezuelan. I have Venezuelans all over where, you know, in both of my gyms now. But growing up, every kid that I knew was first generation Cuban American. We were all the first Cuban Americans that were born in Miami, Florida.
When for you, when did fitness start to become something that really made an impact in your life? How young?
Pretty late in life.
Okay.
My formative years were, I was a troublemaker, you know, from like 12, 13 years old, all the way straight through 21 years old. My life revolved around playing music, skipping school,
Sure.
getting in a lot of trouble. I was involved in like the graffiti, hip hop, punk rock culture in Miami. That subculture is like what I align myself the most with. And yeah, you know, my formative years were playing music. I put out some records with some bands that I played in. We toured for a few years.
Wow.
Yeah, I played some like cool shows, had some really cool experiences that I'll never forget. And those experiences framed what my gym looks like today. Not just from the aesthetics, but like the DIY culture.
Sure.
Like in the formative years of how we came up in CrossFit was very much how I came up in like that punk rock, metal, hip hop scene.
What instrument did you play?
I sang.
You were the singer?
Yeah, dude.
Dang.
Yeah. I played bass in a couple projects. I like know how to play guitar. I can like maneuver myself around a drum set. But mostly I was like known for screaming my head off.
So like metal.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah, like metal, hardcore, and punk rock. That was
When did you notice when you were younger, like, oh, I like singing. I like metal music. I like singing. I want to start a band.
From when, you know, when I was 12 years old, man. When I was 12 years old is the first band that I played in. I was in middle school. And I went to like an art school, and it was full of musician kids. And
The art school was like the public education was an art, like known as an art school.
yes,
okay, cool.
So in South Florida, I don't know if they exist nationally, but we call them magnet schools.
Yeah, they have them. Mhm.
Okay, so it's like a specialty school for arts. It's my son now goes to a performing arts magnet school.
That's cool.
And that's where I went in middle school, and I was around a ton of musicians. And you know, growing up, music played a huge role in my household.
Yeah.
My dad was not a metalhead.
Yeah, no, I would say it was more. What was the vibe of music that they were? Because Latin culture is huge on music.
Latin culture, absolutely. So there's a lot of like Celia Cruz, big
Yeah.
in my house, a lot of salsa merengue at like big parties. But my dad was a hippie, is a hippie.
Okay,
So,
but that's not metal though, is it?
no, not metal. As metallic as my dad got was like Deep Purple, obsessed with Led Zeppelin.
Sure.
Some early Black Sabbath. My dad is a huge fan of the Beatles. So if there was one thing that like played in my house more than anything, the
Beatles.
was the Beatles.
Nice.
So much so that like when I was 10 years old, he took us to the UK and like we went to Abbey Road.
Oh,
We
shoot.
walked on Abbey Road and we signed the
Wow.
the wall at like the Apple recording studio. And like the Beatles are heavily rooted in like my family's life. My mom as well.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
What were your parents doing for work when they migrated over here?
they came when they were kids. After my dad graduated from University of Miami, and he was in sales. He was like a plastics flooring salesman, and then my mom taught in public school. 35 years.
Still retired?
Retired 6 years ago, something like that.
And that school different than yours?
Different than mine. Yeah. I never went to school where my mom taught. My mom did not want me to
Did not
school.
want
She was
oh,
teaching.
man.
My younger brother did, but I did not. I definitely did not.
So when you said that was like your trouble years from 13 to like obviously high school. So that sounds like it's high school, or was it middle school too that you were?
Middle school, high school, and then just thereafter.
Was the trouble that you were getting into, was it like just the graffitiing and the stitching, or?
It was fighting.
Sure.
It was a lot of drug use.
Sure.
I was in and out of rehab centers and drug treatment centers from 13 until 21.
What would
I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
I'll go in on it.
cool, yeah. So
nothing to hide.
the culture there, is it what are the drugs that people are using over there, or at that time?
So, it's really interesting because I talk with people from other subcultures, other cities, other states, other countries even, and they hear about the stuff that was happening when I was a teenager, and they almost can't believe it, But it's not uncommon for high school kids in Miami at that time to have experimented with cocaine,
Sure.
have experimented with, benzos and barbiturates and Valium and Xanax. My drugs of choice early on started innocent, marijuana, LSD and ecstasy, party stuff. And then what brought me to my knees at the end was crack cocaine and heroin.
Shoot. And how old were you when that moment happened?
21.
So 21. How old were you when you first experienced your drugs for the first time?
So the first time I ever experimented with drugs, I was 12.
12.
Yeah.
You remember
And that was
moment?
just marijuana.
Do you remember that moment?
No.
No. Okay.
I don't.
What would you say the first moment of like a core memory of yours was, like, oh shit, like I'm getting into this now?
Man, it wasn't necessarily a substance that I was looking for. It was, now that I reflect on it,
Yeah.
I've done, I've worked steps and I've been heavily involved in like 12-step
Yeah.
programs, and I've done treatment and a lot of therapy in my life. I was looking for approval. I was looking for attention.
Sure.
And for the first time in my life, when I started to play around in that drug subculture, I found a group of people that I felt like I fit in with for one reason or another. And I just fit in, and the second I felt like I fit into a group, I did everything I had to do to become that person. So it wasn't even necessarily about the drugs or the alcohol, whatever it was.
Was wanting to blend in, and that's kind of what
It was really fitting in for me, man. It was very immature, and yeah, it was just like an immature experience.
Sure. Where now the idea of seeking approval, now do you trace that back to like, oh man, I was seeking, how were your parents? How were your parents when it came to?
That's the thing. I don't come from a broken home.
Sure.
And being in meetings and being in these treatment centers, I was around so many people who had hellacious issues and came from broken homes, and I'm very lucky to have never come from a broken home.
Right.
Drugs and alcohol was not something that I saw in my house. There was no abuse in my house. I was 100% sheltered and loved every minute of my life. It was just about trying to fit in with people.
So at 21, when you finally had that moment of do you remember that day where you're like, oh, this is my rock bottom?
I remember it very well, man. One of the last conversations I had with my parents when I was still out there using, I remember calling home, asking if I could come home, because they had kicked me out of the house. I was living on the street.
Yeah. At what age did they kick you out of the house?
Man, I was in and out of their home from 17 until 21.
So senior year, or you were already done with school?
I dropped out.
Oh, you dropped out.
I dropped out.
No GED?
I did get my GED.
You did end up getting it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I ended up getting my GED, but I dropped out in 10th grade.
Oh, you were just like, I'm done.
Done.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm
were
talking
you done?
Truancy officers were coming to the house.
Were you done because the people that you were hanging out with were older than you?
Yes.
And you just want to be like, I want to hang out with this vibe right here.
All things yes.
Okay.
I was a huge rebel.
Sure.
If I was addicted to something, it was being rebellious.
What were you rebelling against?
Man, I don't even know. Just authority in general. I was very adverse to authority my whole formative upbringing.
During, okay, so your whole upbringing, Now, during that time, was that like that was the 90s, I would say, right?
End of the 90s.
End of the 90s, was it like, I'm assuming, what was the culture between like law enforcement and was there rebelling against that kind of authority? Big time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. I own 2 CrossFit gyms now.
Sure.
And my gyms are, and I freaking compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
I am always around police officers.
Right, that's right.
I have the utmost respect for many of them.
Right.
But yeah, as a kid, not so much. You know,
Right.
we're constantly running from cops.
So from 10th grade, so then off and on, you got your GED, but then, yeah, what was that rock bottom moment then?
So what I was saying, like, I remember having that conversation with my dad, and I remember him specifically telling me, like, I don't care if it's a birthday. I don't care if it's a holiday. You are no longer welcome in this house.
Yeah.
They had restraining orders against me. They didn't want me on the street.
They had restraining orders against you?
Yes.
What was it? What were your acts that you were doing that led to your own parents being like, hey, theft? You were stealing from them?
I was stealing from them, and the straw that broke the camel's back was I stole their rental car and totaled it driving to the dope hole.
Okay.
And that was like one of the last, that was the end of the road for them. And I remember having that conversation. I don't remember if I was like asking for money or asking if I could come home or help or whatever it was, but he told me, he goes, you're done. I set up treatment for you at South Miami Hospital Addiction Treatment Program. And when you're ready, that's your last chance. You can go there, but when you go there, we don't want to hear from you. Don't call us. Don't tell us you're in treatment. You go to treatment. And I thought I was a badass, and I was like, F you, whatever.
Because that felt like authority.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. And I kept using. I stayed out there using, couch surfing, sleeping on the street. I was breaking into cars, pawning stuff, going to the dope hole. Like that was the end of my using. And for me, I was using substances that were making me physically ill. And I remember my dad telling me that, so I checked into that treatment center. And I went to the treatment center. I didn't even have the purest intentions. I did not want to get clean. I just wanted to not be sick for a couple days.
right. Okay.
You know, and I checked myself into that treatment center, and I was very resistant. I didn't want to hear anything that they had to say. But while I was in detox, they brought a Narcotics Anonymous meeting to detox. And I remember seeing a guy sit there covered in tattoos, looking like a punk rock guy, talking like me, using my same slang and saying how he's clean for X amount of years, and he was about to get married, and he owned his own house, and he had a car, and like I was tuning into all of the material things. I was so like emotionally bankrupt,
Right.
that like all I could see was the material stuff.
Sure.
But for whatever reason, I heard that message, and because this guy looked like me,
Yeah.
and sounded like me,
Sure.
I decided to hear what he had to say.
Sure.
And that day I asked that guy to sponsor me.
Okay.
And from then on, I stayed clean, you know?
At what point then did you have that moment of like, oh shit, I've really hurt my family?
I always had a very, through all my chaos, I still understood that I was causing them pain. But my addiction was so deep and so heavy at that point. Like, at this point, it wasn't about being a rebel anymore. It was just about getting high.
Yeah. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but then like when you have that shame and you don't have a way to like cope with it, then you double down.
Yep.
And then it continues to keep
Yep.
you down that shame
Yep.
cycle. And you're like, no way. Like, you become more of a rebel because of that.
I was using so much and so hard, and really my really heavy drug use only existed for a couple years.
Sure.
So, from, 12, 13 until 17, it was a lot of innocent kid stuff.
Sure.
And the heavy drug use was only a couple of years. But, yes, I was trying to escape and not feel the pain that I was putting myself through, but it was just about more substances.
Sure.
More substances. Sure. That's what I was chasing.
Did you have any like big scary moments while you were under the substance?
Ton. Yeah.
What would be like some of the ones that are like, oh, I'm really pushing it here?
I've overdosed a few times.
Okay. All right.
I've been hospitalized a few times.
Yeah.
I was was using substances that were causing me to stay awake for several days, and I was hallucinating.
Yeah.
I thought people were chasing after me.
Right.
I was calling the police on myself.
Wow.
So.
Right. And then, so, I mean, okay, you kind of threw that out there, and then I got a sponsor, and then everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't want to discredit them, how difficult that was.
It was.
So like, how was, once you're like, okay, I've committed, that's my sponsor, this dude looks like me, I feel like, I'll listen to him. Then what did that look like?
I don't want to, I don't want to discredit the amount of hard work that I've put into like my recovery in those years and all the hard work that I've done to get to where I am today. But I got to be honest with you. I feel like it was easy.
Whoa. Okay.
You know why? Because the moment that I truly put my hands up and I said, you know what? I don't know how to do this.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know how to live as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answers. I don't know what recovery looks like. I put trust into other people, a sponsor,
Right.
a room of other addicts in recovery, a therapist, and I really trusted this group of people to tell me what to do. And I was involved in like a sponsorship family where they really did control a lot that I did. Right. I'm talking like time that I went, like I had curfews.
Right.
So
coming from someone that you were super rebelling against authority, like how was that?
But there's like a freedom
Right.
in putting your hands up and saying,
I surrender.
you guys tell me what to do.
Yeah, sure.
And I didn't fight it. I like really gave up everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I walked into that treatment center as like an atheist and an angry kid and a rebel, blah, 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 blah. And they were like, you got to pray to God. I don't care if you believe it or not. I said, okay. You got to come home at this time. I don't care what. Okay. Here are your rules. Here's what you got to do. You want to get what we have? You want to get to where we've gotten to? Mm-hmm. Here's what we've done. And I followed that blueprint to a T with zero deviation from their plan. And it was actually really simple.
Wow.
Because I allowed them to tell me what to do.
Now I picked up that family, that sponsor family, right? They were like, hey, we need you to pray. We need you to believe in something above yourself. Yes. Did you choose to, were they religious? Like what were they? They weren't religious. They were just like, hey, you need to.
Yeah, they were spiritual, non-religious.
Okay.
Is like kind of that energy. In those rooms, there are religious people, but this sponsorship group of people that I aligned myself with were spiritual, non-religious. Some were religious, but
they say a lot of times you have to believe in something more than yourself.
Absolutely.
Because if not, like if you are your own God, then that's where destruction comes from.
Well, so that was my higher power. My higher power was a group of people that had their stuff together.
Yeah.
That were doing things that I was not. Like the collective energy of those men.
The community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was my higher power.
That's so good. Recently I heard a thing that said it takes a whole community to draw out the whole person. Sounds like that's what happened.
Yeah, man. I found it's interesting because like if you look at the punk hip hop scumbags that I was rolling with, in the 90s, and then fast forward to 2006, and you look at the people in recovery that I was hanging out with, they look the same. They're the same guys. They just have different principles and they're at a different stage in their life.
So then going back to that group of people you're hanging out with, like talk about that evolution. What happened when you were like, all right, I committed to recovery. What happened to that group of friends?
The old friends, they have all either died, gone to prison, some prison and death. And that's pretty much it, man. Like I had some good friends from that era, so a lot of really good, important people in my life that I had burned and screwed over a lot. And I still keep in touch with them now. We've made our amends and we're cool. But like, man, the ones that were really, really, really deep in, they are all dead or in prison.
Did they try to reach out to you when you got out of the rehab center?
Some did, and they were all very proud of me.
Oh, that's so good.
I never got one F you, sell out.
So how did that, looking back at that moment then, how does that, reflecting on that, like, hey, they're proud of you even though they were in the heavy usage. What do you think about that?
I think it's special.
Yeah.
I think it's unique, but I also think it's a testament to how destructive my personal addiction was.
Sure.
I got to the point that the junkies didn't want me around.
Wow.
Like I was stealing from the junkies.
Sure.
You know, like, dude, I stole from my mother. I would have stolen from anybody.
Right.
And I was stealing from everybody and anyone. That was my thing. That's
Right.
how I kept getting high, was
Just steal.
stealing from stores, stealing from people, you name it. That was like my game.
And then what you
Rashing.
sell the stuff?
Yep. I would sell the stuff, or I'd take it to a dope hole and sell it to the guys who had the dope.
Wow.
And then I was trading.
How long did it take for you to make amends with your parents? And even your brother?
So like my parents, when I went into treatment, I remember being like early days in treatment, calling them, and they pick up the phone and hang up.
Wow.
We don't want to talk to you. We don't, because this was my 10th treatment.
Sure.
So they're like, when you're in there for a while,
Right.
and you prove that you got it together, we'll see. And then I don't remember exactly what it was, but like 30 days into my treatment, they finally came to a family group, and it was brutal. It was brutal.
You were in the hot seat.
So many tears, so many thrown chairs, so many slammed doors.
Sure.
so
And how old are you then?
Then I was 20, 21. Yeah, I got sober February 12th, 2006.
So you're a father now.
I am.
You have one son.
Mm-hmm.
How
One son and a stepdaughter.
and a stepdaughter? Okay. And now that you are in that perspective from them, and looking back at your story, like how has that shaped you as a person?
I live in fear.
Sure.
Look, my parents are and were a dream come true.
Yeah.
However, there was that like, let's not talk about our problems in my household. That kind of, we just didn't talk about
Sure.
the important stuff in my household.
Right.
To be honest with you.
Right.
There was not a lot of feelings talk. We didn't explore those things. Now my parents do. Now we've learned the importance of that. I mean, man, in those days, I was raised on Burger King. Like, and those are things that my parents don't do now either. Like, those are just the tools that they had, I guess, during that time.
Right.
And that's not the reason why I ended up how I ended up. But in that era, we just didn't talk about those things. Like, we didn't have the hard sex conversations, the drug conversations. Now with my son, I talk to him the same way I talk to you. Like, I treat him with love and care. However, I talk to him like he's my little man, and I'm very open and very honest with him about everything. And, I think we've broken that, at least that aspect of that cycle.
How old is he?
He's 12.
He's 12. Yeah. That's which is kind of when you started
Exactly.
that life took over for you.
Exactly. So really, I'm trying to parent him the same exact way that my parents parented I, with a little bit more talking, a little bit more emotion,
Sure.
a little bit more feelings, and exploring those things with him.
Yeah, same thing. My parents divorced more when I left high school actually, and I was like, man, I didn't come from a broken home, and as I've been doing this core stuff in therapy and recognizing that even though I didn't come from a broken home, like that whole emotional neglect, not talking about that stuff, the fact that we remember that was the neglect.
Yeah.
And for sometimes, so for me, like, I can empathize for that for sure, because it's like, hey, that's the approval that I was seeking. It's like, hey, I'm seeking approval that I'm accepted for who I am when I'm making these mistakes. But if I make mistakes, if we don't talk about mistakes here in this family, then what are we doing here? The most vulnerable thing.
Yep.
And that's stuff that I've had to go through recently, which has been tough, because you're like, but no, my parents aren't the bad guys. They're not the bad guys. And it's not that they're not the bad guys. It goes back to they only knew what they knew. However, don't discount like what we went through as children.
Yeah.
Because then then we're always running away from
Always.
what we endured.
Always.
So that's special that you're there, man. Because as we're now parents, I often put myself in their place. It's like, oh my gosh, it gets wild. And as the older they get, then it becomes even more closer to home.
Yeah.
I really remember where I was at in this.
Dude, I mean, still to this day, probably twice a week, I drop Aiden off at school and I watch him walk to school in his Jordan book bag with his Misfits patch on, and just like I had when I was a kid. And I sit in my car crying.
Yeah, man.
That's all. Wow. Because he's freaking 12 years old. He's walking to school. I drop him off on the corner by himself, and like, I can't believe it. I cannot believe it.
Yeah.
And it scares me to death.
Right.
We've put in so much work with him, and he's such an incredible, talented, like, loving child. But it still scares me to death to drop him off at a public school.
Yeah.
Bounce, Like we were just talking about it before we started recording about how he just got his first cell phone.
Yeah.
And like times have changed so much. Everything that's been happening in schools for the last few years, I need him to go to school with a cell phone. I communicate with him the same way I text with everybody. Yo, what's up? How's first period? It's a scary time for sure.
Wow. Yeah. So going back to that moment of like, all right, I had to make amends with my family. We had that that circle session, and that was really difficult. Was it from that moment forward? Do you remember the first time that your dad and mom were like, "Hey, son, we forgive you"?
I mean, I don't remember like the first time necessarily. There was so much of that, and the process of working steps was very long.
Yeah.
And there were several different series of amends.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my amends were, instead of doing this, because I had talked so much for such a long time and I lied and manipulated so many people in my life, that a lot of my amends were, it's time to show.
Yeah, show.
It's time to lead and to prove with my actions in front of people. But what I learned was most important was how I act when no one's watching.
Yeah, that's the real recovery.
For me, that was the hit. For me, that's the integrity. Is like, how I can be on a camera, I can talk in front of a group of people.
Well, that's performing.
Yes. But what do I do when the lights are off?
Yeah.
What do I do when no one's watching?
Right.
For me, that was like the real recovery. So that, like, those were most of the amends that I made to the people that were very important to me, being my parents and my brother mostly.
Sure.
And then to like other people, I made other amends to. My sponsor had me write some letters to some folks and make some phone calls. Some people told me to screw off.
Yeah.
And some people, accepted me with open arms and were like really stoked to see where I was, and that was what that process was like.
How's your relationship with your parents now?
Incredible.
Wow, dude, that's awesome.
Incredible.
Wow.
Almost too much.
Wow.
Yeah, like right now they're with my girl and her daughter and my son. They're like at a cooking class right now.
Now, you said the people that you used to hang out with, like, they're all dead or they're in jail. Like, how does that reflect the moment when you look back as you're going through your recovery and you're like, oh, man.
Crazy, man. Crazy. They were dropping like flies left and right. But I mean, that's that lifestyle. That's what happens.
Yeah. How old were you? So how old were you when you got pregnant with your boy?
He was born in 2012, so I was 26, something like that.
Okay, how was that when you first found out that you were going to be a papa? Yeah,
crazy. I remember when his mom and I were not together, but
yeah.
I remember when she told me. I was at a punk rock show at Churchill's, like this venue in Miami, and this band Madball, that means a lot to me, was playing, and she called me and told me, and I told my friends, and they like put me on stage. Like people celebrated me and him, and it very, very, very hard. Like the whole culture, the whole community, everyone loves Aiden tremendously, and that started that night, and that has never gone away. He's like the light, always.
Yes, that's special, man. Yeah. So then tie in your fitness journey. Then when did you find fitness? Then
so, funny story. When I was in treatment,
when you were in treatment,
in 2006, one of the activities they would take us to is they would take us to a gym, like a YMCA type of gym. And a trainer was coming to the gym, this Asian guy, and his name's Sean Velas. And he was teaching this like boot campy, CrossFit-y, like now I can call it CrossFit, but it was like basically do laps, air squats, do laps, push-ups, do laps, jump squats. And that was my first taste of fitness. I had a roommate in the rehab center who was this big jacked guy, and he had Muscle and Fitness magazines lying all over our cottage.
Right.
And I started reading those and just nerding out more on that. And then I became like really stoked to go back to those fitness classes.
Yeah.
And Sean was like, "Oh, you did 10 push-ups last week. This week, try to do 20 or whatever it is, you know, just those like basic progressions." And, you know, fell in love with fitness right then and there due to the fact that I was bored as hell in treatment. And I had nothing better to do.
Wow.
So like we had nothing more to do than just work out. And my post-treatment plan after leaving the treatment center, my therapist and my sponsor asked me to do was sign up at a gym.
Yeah.
You need to fill your dead time with as many things as you can do. And they like literally had me pen and paper write down a schedule.
Right.
So part of that was like going to a gym. And, you know, I took some of the stuff that I learned from those Muscle and Fitness magazines and some of this boot campy stuff that Sean was having us do. And I started doing that stuff at a local park and at a Bally's Total Fitness.
Bally's, bro.
Yep.
Oh my, did they get bought out?
They did get bought out
By LA Fitness, huh?
by LA Fitness.
Bally's,
and that UFC gym or whatever.
That was like a hood gym.
Super hood of my
Super ratchet.
very ratchet, very ratchet.
Wow.
But I was like, instinctually, I was blending stuff from Muscle and Fitness that Sean had taught me.
Yeah.
And like, you know, now we call that CrossFit.
Yeah.
But then I didn't even know what I was doing. But I was like doing sets on the bench and then doing max sets push-ups.
Sure.
And like crappy back squats and max sets air squats or whatever I was doing. You know, so fast forward. I end up working in drug treatment.
Oh.
Yeah. I was an overnight counselor monitoring the patients in a drug treatment center, and a friend of mine showed me CrossFit.com.
And how old were you then?
23.
Oh, shoot. Okay, so...
2 years into my recovery, 3 years into my recovery.
Okay.
He showed me CrossFit.com because he knew I was like a fitness junkie.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, I like essentially replaced my bad habits with these fitness
habits.
Yeah. You know, and he was like, you got to stop doing what you're doing.
Right.
You got to put it together a little bit more.
Structure it. Yeah.
And structure it. And that's what this CrossFit thing is. Wow. And like my introduction to it was on the website. And I was looking at workouts on CrossFit.com. This now would have been in 2008 or 7, 8, something like that. And I was message boarding and leaving my times and doing workouts in my garage and doing workouts in the park and still doing CrossFit workouts in Bally Total Fitness, et cetera, et cetera. And this guy was a member of one of the first affiliates in Miami. And he was inviting me to go to their Saturday fire breather throwdown workouts. And that was my first taste of CrossFit. It was going to the affiliate where he ended up being a partner in several years down the road. But that affiliate, they're called CrossFit 305. I'm very proud to have been like one of the original guys that went there. Not the first crew, but probably the second crew of guys that were in that gym. They were in an 800 square foot gym in Little Haiti, Northeast Miami.
So it's like a garage.
A garage.
Yeah, that's a garage.
A nasty garage.
Wow.
Plastic, loud punk rock.
Yeah, there we go.
Bass electronic music.
Wow.
Throwing down with a bunch of savages. Then the first affiliate in my hood and the Kendall area opened, and I was the first client at that gym. I was the first person to sign up in that gym.
So so you were 23 years old when you found CrossFit, and now the whole idea of CrossFit training started taking, you adopted into your life. What were you doing when you checked out of rehab? You were 21. That window was your source of income working at the rehab center then? Or working for
I was laying tile.
Oh, you were laying tile.
I was laying tile. I was working. I was doing I was taking any odd jobs that anybody in an AA or NA meeting would give me.
Oh, okay.
I was volunteering in treatment. I was going to 2 or 3 meetings a day.
Yeah.
I was volunteering for Narcotics Anonymous, picking up odd jobs, living in a halfway house, and going to the gym. Wow. That was my whole entire life. It was wake up in the morning, go for a run, go to a morning meeting, go home, make some food, do some journal entries or whatever, go to electric lunch, a 12 o'clock meeting, go to the gym again. That was my life for 2 years until I started working in drug treatment.
Who were your friends at that point? Because obviously those are people that are in your meetings, but how did you make new friends?
All my friends were recovery people.
Okay.
I like, for those early years, I stopped going to punk shows. Nobody saw me. No one saw me at all. I literally only went to meetings.
Yeah, it was like, this is my recovery.
That was it. Yeah, that was like my addiction or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
That's all I did. I was plugged into recovery and fitness. That's it.
So then you became a member of that first CrossFit gym ever out in Miami. And then how long were you there a member for before you then started your first affiliate?
So very quickly, that gym had major issues.
Okay.
The guy who owned that gym, I'm not going to speak poorly about anybody, but it just wasn't it.
Yeah.
And within a very short amount of time, I was actually managing that gym.
Okay, so
I knew this much about fitness. Sure. And make a very long, chaotic group of stories short. I was showing up to classes and there was no coach.
Right.
And I would call this person and they were like, "Oh crap, I overslept."
Yeah.
Or
lack of professionalism. Yeah, for sure.
Can you run this class for me?
Wow.
I was like, all right, okay. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. And I took it upon myself to learn because there was a community there and they were cool people.
Yeah.
And I was throwing down with them. So they meant something to me.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had a sense of ownership. People, for whatever reason, were looking at me for advice. I didn't know shit, but they were still looking at me for advice. And this person who owned this gym put me in that role. I didn't know anything. So what did I do? Same thing I told you when we first started talking, like that DIY punk rock ethic that I had, I figured it out.
Yeah, you figured it out.
I went to gyms that were open longer than that gym and I learned from them. And I traveled to take seminars and I traveled to take certifications. And I started to read message boards. There was no YouTube. There was no Instagram. There was hardly Facebook at that time. It was all message board heavy. And I learned as much as I could. I read every sentence that Greg Glassman put in a CrossFit Journal article. Like my Narcotics Anonymous books eventually went away, and they turned into the CrossFit Journal.
Yeah.
And everything Greg ever put out and those early performance menus and Rob Wolf and OPT was a huge part of my formative years in CrossFit. All those OG guys, Jason Kalipa, Miranda, all of these people that I had seen on these message boards, I met them, I emailed them, I reached out to them, and I went to their gyms. I went to train with Coach B. I put myself there the same way I did in the formative years of my punk rock life, where again, there was no Spotify. You had to go to the record store to dig through records and be like, oh, here's this Misfits record. Or, oh, here's this Against All Authority record. And you turn the record around and, oh, look, he's wearing a Dead Kennedy shirt. I wonder what they sound like. And, I put my fitness life together the same way I put my punk rock life together.
At what point did you, because you did a bunch of punk rocking, you went out to concerts, you sang. When did you kind of let that go? Because then the business side of the CrossFit started taking off.
So after managing this gym for a year, it just became very chaotic for me to stay in that place. And I had built a community there, and we didn't want to stay there anymore. Sure. So I bounced and I opened Soul. I opened Soul in August of 2010.
So you're 24, 25 at that time?
Something like that.
Somewhere around that time? 25. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And then
my son was born 3 years after that. I was 23, 24. My son was born 3 years after that.
Okay, so then you started your first CrossFit. How big was that space?
800 square feet, just like CrossFit 305 was.
Wow.
Small hole in the wall warehouse. It had a small loft on top so we could oversee and look at it at the gym, but it was a really small gym in West Miami-Dade.
Did you have to like pull out like a loan or anything like that? Or how'd you fund that?
Aiden's mom and I, we emptied our savings account.
Sure.
I had a very small like thrift savings account from like a nonprofit drug prevention agency that I was working for. And we opened the gym with like 10 G's.
Okay.
Very rough around the edges.
Yeah.
All used equipment. Rogue was not even like
They weren't a thing?
They were not even, they had just started, but like they were not selling equipment on that level.
Yeah. What was the
I bought my
company? It was
first
like
bumper plates from High Temp. Chuck in
wow.
Alabama, who then he sold his High Temp stuff, his intellectual property, I believe, to Rogue. And those are the first Rogue plates that we know of, those like crumble bumpers. But he drove to South Florida.
Those rubber bumpers, is that what you said?
Yeah, those
like tire
crumble ones.
The crumble ones.
Yeah, the tire ones.
So the Faco
Yeah, that was Chuck's stuff, and that's what I opened the gym with. My first gym was like DIY pull-up bars that we put together with a bunch of John Gilson, again, faster equipment.
Yeah, that's right. Again, faster, huh?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Right. Yeah. Christian's Fitness Factory was an equipment company, and we bought a lot of
Christian's Fitness Factory. Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that's how we opened our gym. And, you know, at that time, there were more gyms starting to open in Miami.
Yeah, sure.
And gyms in Miami did what gyms in Miami do. In my opinion, you know, this is going to sound a little judgy, but they like bastardize a ton of stuff. They like turned this cool, rough around the edges concept into like nightclubs. They filled classes with 50 people, these big boot campy loud classes with this loud music and coaches just walking around cheerleading. Those were things that were not CrossFit drills.
No, for sure.
That was not performance menu.
Right.
That was not what I was listening to and learning when I was traveling. I went to Ohio to learn from Louis Simmons. I went to California to learn from Coach B. I learned from Greg himself. Like that, none of those guys I felt were doing that.
Right.
It's okay what they're doing.
Sure.
It's their thing. And people go and look for those things. That's very Miami, you know?
Very Miami.
Super Miami. But we wanted to do something different that stood out. So we opened and we immediately put caps on our classes.
Cool.
No, never had big classes in our gyms. And still to this day, neither of my gyms, like we have caps on all of our classes.
How big?
15.
15. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, 15. You know, sometimes it's, you know, if we're doing Murph, like, yeah, there'll be 40 people in there throwing down.
Of course.
But on a regular basis, my gym is quality over quantity. We do not accept big, large classes, and we still keep those principles to this day.
And then did you ever jump into the competitive culture when you first started off?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When I, you know, like.
And it's very, and keep in mind, when I say that, I understand the competitive culture was very different than it is now.
Oh,
so
totally.
it was like a little bit easier to do it and still maintain life.
Well, I mean, the competitive culture then was not working out for 6 hours a day.
Correct.
And it was not, I mean, sometimes we would do multiple workouts, but we would do a few watts.
Sure.
We're not training. We were not doing a 2-hour lifting session and then practicing our gymnastics and then our powerlifting session and our endurance work. No, we were just destroying ourselves.
Right.
The hardest workouts we could find online.
Yeah.
You know, if Spiel did it, we were going to try to do it.
Sure.
You know, I remember they used to post those fire breather workouts on the bottom left-hand side of the CrossFit Kids site that his kids were doing. We used to follow those. You know, so like.
Oh, that's right. That's like the RX Plus was the fire breather, huh?
Fire breather. That's what it was called way back when.
Wow.
But like competitors were still taking class.
Yeah, they were still taking class.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that was the workout of the day. Like if it was Fran, it was Fran, and you understood the intensity behind Fran, and you understood the benefits you were going to get from that, and you didn't need to do more. You know, so yes, the lines of like community and competition back then were like this.
Right. It made sense. It made sense.
Absolutely, because the throwdowns and the competitions were barbecue.
Right. It was a backyard barbecue throwdown. Yeah, for
It
sure.
was super amateur.
Right.
It's not how it's turned into now.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I remember 2012. No, was it 2011? 2012 SoCal regionals. It was like in the fairground.
The fairgrounds, Del Mar.
It was just hot. No.
No, before Del Mar.
It was in another location before Del Mar. Del Mar was when they got
bigger.
They got the big spectacle, the regional stuff. Yeah. I think it was just like on this blacktop section. I forget where it was.
Is that where the OC Throwdown was?
Maybe.
I remember
It was at a fairgrounds.
Yeah, OC.
Pomona. It was at the Pomona Fairgrounds.
Yeah, that sounds.
That's Pomona Fairgrounds. That's where regionals was at in 2012.
Yeah.
On just
And then after that, OC Throwdown took that space, right?
and no, OC Throwdown still went to Orange County. They had it at Orange County Fairgrounds
Okay.
and close to Costa Mesa.
That's why I do it because of all these.
Chalk, and then but Del Mar regionals was in 2012. Now in Del Mar, at the fairgrounds there.
Yeah. You know, so back then the lines were very blurry.
Yeah.
You know, and that is the competitive spirit that even to this day I love.
Yeah, it's fun.
You know, like I respect where it is now. I think it's fine, but it's not for me.
Yeah, it's
Where it is now is really not for
it's just continued to evolve away from the original.
Like, look, I kind of have a hot take. Like, I don't know that. Like, I know right now there's like this huge movement to professionalize the sport of fitness. I don't think it needs to be professionalized.
I think it's just going to get more complicated if that route goes for sure.
Yeah. And there's more separation between the 1% and everybody else.
Yeah,
And that's all that's happening. I mean, it's now at the point where like the 1%ers aren't even members of affiliates.
right. Well, it's so funny, coming back full circle. Well, before I even hit this comment, what was the first year? Because I remember when I first had an introduction to CrossFit Soul, I think it was like I went to Wadapalooza I competed in 2016.
It was the Progenics one where we took the bikes.
Yeah.
And Matt Chan and Jason and you and Everett Spiel was there.
Yeah, but I remember that you had a team assembled that was really making a run for contention at the games. So what was the first year and how was that feeling when you first band together a team?
It was incredible.
Wow.
It was incredible, and it was like So I've had an I've coached the CrossFit Games a few times. I worked with Samantha Briggs for a season.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So I coached her like year when she returned back to the games. This is the year after she didn't qualify after winning because of the handstand walk. Mm-hmm. I coached her first year back. And when Samantha came to Miami, she left a permanent mark on my gym, on my team, and people really, man, I have goosebumps talking about this. People really learned what hard training was like.
I mean, talk about an engine, bro. Engine. Like, unbelievable.
Unbelievable is kind of like an understatement.
Yeah.
Even to this day, some of her aerobic and endurance.
It's phenomenal.
And gymnastics too. Like people forget about like that she was, on the rings, on that bar, her bar muscle ups were beautiful. She really, really, really left a permanent mark on the women in my gym.
Yes.
Especially the women in my gym and my team. And I coach my ass off. These people train their ass off, but I have to attribute a lot of my early coaching success to Samantha Briggs. 100%.
That's so awesome, man. Because I remember, you're right. She won the CrossFit Games in 2014, but in 2015 she missed it because of the handstand walk, and then 2016 she came back.
Moved to Miami.
That's right. That's right.
Right after not qualifying, she came down to Miami. I was working for Progenics at the time. So through those circles is how I met her. And actually, I'll tell you exactly when it was. It was at a Granite Games, and she was warming up to snatch, and she's not the best snatcher.
Yeah, it's just
And I was told, you know how to coach weightlifting. So I was working for Coach B's seminar staff at the time. I was on his international. I was the first person to coach CrossFit weightlifting in Latin America. It was in CrossFit Bogota.
Yeah.
I taught the first seminar there.
Wow.
And I was working for Coach B, so I was told, you know how to coach weightlifting. Go help her out. And she was warming up.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, you need some help? And right then we hit it off. And she, right after winning that Granite Games, she came to Miami and lived with me for a year.
That's so awesome. Yeah. How long were you into the weightlifting culture and learning? Because obviously everything that you picked up was from, you adopted CrossFit, you picked up what Greg Glassman was trying to say, the elements of what fitness means, elite fitness, and when did you really pick up the weightlifting side of things?
So, like having a barbell club and a CrossFit gym is something that you guys in California on the West Coast did from the inception of CrossFit. From the roots of CrossFit, there were barbell clubs and people doing snatch and clean and jerk in CrossFit gyms in California.
Right.
And that did not exist in Miami anywhere. There was no high school weightlifting. There was no USA weightlifting clubs. There was no USA weightlifting meets. Weightlifting in Miami-Dade County almost did not exist at all. But I was looking at you guys. I was looking at these gyms in California.
Like Valley CrossFit and stuff?
Absolutely. Valley CrossFit was a huge one that I looked at as well.
Love.
And I was like, this is what I want to do. And that to me, that was not like something counterculture-y or to be different. Like the best gyms in the world, in my opinion, at the time, were all in California, in Seattle too. It was all West Coast gyms. So I copied those guys.
Yeah, that's cool.
The same way in recovery that I copied my sponsor, I copied you guys on the West Coast. And I tried to bring that energy to the gym in Miami. And that's how that started. And a fundamental aspect to being successful in CrossFit for your general population or a competitor, snatch and clean and jerk have a huge piece of that puzzle.
Huge.
So I taught myself how to coach and compete and be a weightlifter myself.
Then you were flying out to these seminars and stuff too?
Yeah, so I was going out to Coach B. We brought Coach B out to Miami.
Yeah, cool.
He taught some seminars in Fort Lauderdale. I shadowed him a few times. And he booked, this was in 2011, I think. He booked a seminar in CrossFit Bogota. And his head trainer at the time, his name is JP Bolwan. And he was a redshirt. He worked for the level 1 seminar staff. And he was sending him out there. And I remember Coach B called me. He goes, Danny, you speak Spanish, right? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, how about you go help JP in Colombia? And I was like, what?
Wow.
And just like that, I went out there and, dude, for 5 years, I've taught in Portugal, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, Guatemala, all over Latin America.
So your Spanish is that fluent, huh?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I live with 2 Venezuelan women. My girl and her mom, so I'm very highly judgmental about my Spanish.
Sure.
But yeah, I've taught full seminars, 2 days straight, 0 words in English, nothing.
I think that could be tiresome.
Super difícil.
Oh my gosh, because you're actually having to think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And learning envión y cuclilla and all these different words.
Yeah.
What saves me is that CrossFit is done in English, no matter where you go.
No matter, that's right.
Snatch is el snatch.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So there are some translations, some words for some of those things, but mostly a lot of it is still done in English.
Yeah.
I know.
When your gym started taking on the competitive team and they started really getting into that, how did it rally your community? And was there an evolution where that became a huge focus and a rallying point? And then did it come back to reality, or how was that? How did that impact your gym, whether good or bad?
Since Soul's inception, my entry point to CrossFit, it wasn't general population or competitors. Like I told you, it was the same.
Right.
Because competitions were just barbecues. So I would be competing somewhere, we would write it on the whiteboard, and all of my clients would show up to support me, and they were also participating in masters categories and beginners and scale divisions. And it was something that we fostered, and it was not, you're not going out there to compete. You're just going out there to be fit, and to celebrate all the hard work you do during the week, You're going to go out there with a bunch of like-minded people. You're going to do 3 workouts. You know, so like we didn't have those barriers and those boundaries. Like signing up for a competition was not stuffy. It was more like signing up for a 5K.
Exactly. Right.
You know what I'm
It was a
saying?
different. Yes.
Like, dude, like, you know, if you go out with a bunch of street parking clients and you do a 5K, does it feel like you guys are competing?
No.
It's like a communal thing.
Right.
You know, so that's really what it was. And you know, then obviously Reebok came into the space. Things started to get a little bit more organized and more formal.
Right.
And it still had its magic.
Right.
Like regional, you know, so now the second phase of competition was like, you know, the regional era. And that was magical too.
Yeah.
Because like you know what my clients were doing? Okay, so here's what happens when something major happens in politics in Miami, or the Dolphins, the Heat, the Marlins win. The Cubans take the pots and pans. Have you ever seen that? Take pots and pans and they bang them. Ding, ding, ding.
Oh,
ding,
okay.
ding,
I've
ding,
seen that
ding,
before,
ding,
yeah.
ding, ding, ding. Anytime the Heat win and you drive on Calle or Bird Road,
Yeah.
you hear bang, 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 bang. So what was happening at regionals? We were competing, and my clients were coming out and bringing pots and
Wow.
pans and Cubancho and everywhere you went. So it was like always magical. It was a way that like we brought all of our communities together. And at that time, everyone competing with me and for me were also my coaches.
Yeah.
So it was one thing was feeding the other and helping everything grow. And we didn't have those lines of I'm a competitor and
Right.
that didn't exist.
Right. So it's so funny that you brought up Calle Ocho, because then we'll pull away from the CrossFit culture. Pitbull made Calle Ocho feel like popular.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts
Mr.
on
305,
what are your
baby?
thoughts on Mr. 305?
I love Pitbull. Okay, so
Awesome.
like what we know as Pitbull now, and
Yeah.
like his reggaeton, now he's Mr. Worldwide.
That's worldwide. Right?
yeah,
Right.
now he makes what I call cruise ship music.
Right.
But Pitbull was a thug, baby.
It was hard.
Pitbull
Yeah.
was M.I.M. like real thug music.
Dang.
He had braids. He used to cut
Yeah.
hair at 24th Street Barbershop.
Yeah.
Like we used to go see him there. I've seen him perform at Hot Wheels when I was growing up.
Dang.
Like Pitbull was a thug.
Dang.
He's not what. So like I got love for Pitbull.
Yeah, sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then this Calle Ocho, what made Calle Ocho so famous and popular? What is it about that?
So Calle Ocho is a street in Miami. It reaches from the Everglades all the way to downtown Miami. The east side, closer to downtown, that's where Little Havana is. That's where Domino Park is.
Okay.
So
Calle Ocho is just a long road.
8th Street.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it cuts through the middle of Miami.
Dang.
Yeah. So there's just, I don't know what it is about that number. I don't know what it is about that street, but that's like what represents our culture tremendously.
So it hits like the ugly parts of Florida too, because you said it goes to the Everglades?
Well, remember the Everglades is south.
Right.
So it goes east to west.
Oh my gosh. So then it hits the nice parts too. Because I think I remember
There's no nice parts on Calle Ocho.
There's not?
Not really.
Oh shoot. Okay.
Not really. I mean, when you go further west
Right.
to the Everglades, there's like big houses out there just because there's so much space.
Right.
But there ain't nothing nice on Calle Ocho.
Oh man.
Calle Ocho's not very nice. There's beautiful parts of suburban Miami, Coconut Grove, Coral Gables. There's some
Sure.
really nice upscale stuff, but not on Calle Ocho. And then like I said, the east side of it, that's Little Havana.
Right.
And it like looks and feels like
Yeah, the vibe there is awesome. Or
Yeah, man. So like Domino Park is like a famous little park in Little Havana, and that's where all the Cubanitos go to smoke their cigars and play dominoes, argue about politics.
and dancing in the evenings and stuff like that. And the nights. Wow.
Absolutely.
Do you ever get into that kind of like, what are the Cubans? They just salsa merengue or what?
Salsa merengue.
Right,
They don't do bachata.
They don't do bachata.
No, salsa
Okay.
merengue. Salsa merengue.
Did you ever get into that?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not a dancer.
Sure.
But, like I appreciate salsa merengue.
Sure.
Like crazy. I will still listen to salsa merengue. We have parties. Salsa merengue plays.
Yeah.
You know.
Man, there's just such a cool vibe around like someone like people that are good at dancing salsa merengue.
I totally agree.
It's just an art that you're like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm glued in.
Yeah.
I'm glued in.
Yeah.
That's why I started to take, because there was like a place out in Hollywood that on Monday nights, they would convert it into like, they would have a live salsa band that would come in, small restaurant, smaller than this office. But it was like intimate, cozy, and just you see good dancers going out there, and then I started dance classes, and that's how. And then Miranda, there's some videos of Miranda and I actually
that's so
salsa
funny.
dancing and stuff because I just started doing it randomly on my own, and then I would post it on Instagram that I was taking salsa class, and people are like, "Wait, what?" But I still love doing that kind
Yeah,
of
it's super cool. Miami's full of little dance studios. I bet everywhere. Kids, adults, you name it.
Yeah, once the kids get a little older, I definitely, Miranda and I will start picking up on that because that's just something that I would like them to learn.
Yeah.
It's just the boys learning that kind of dance because it's beautiful, man.
Yeah, I agree.
Beautiful dance. So Miami, did you ever get into the partying Miami culture?
No.
You were just like whatever.
Yeah, like the party Miami scene
Sure.
night, like Club Space is like a famous club there. I've never even been there.
Sure.
Club Live, never even been there. I don't know anything about that.
What is like the realities of that culture? Like, what are the ugly things that you've seen around?
I mean, like it's very shallow.
Sure.
Like people in those spaces, and again, I don't know firsthand.
Right.
It's
From
just-
what you've observed.
Yeah, what I observe is like people want to talk to you if you got money. If you're
Right.
driving the nicest car, that's how you get attention.
Sure.
That's not something that ever meant anything to me. I've had periods in my life where I've done very well, times better than others, and I never flex. Like that's not something that is impressive to me. To be honest with you, coming from Miami, the more I see people flex, the less I think it's real.
Yeah,
Less
of course.
I think
You
it's
know.
authentic.
Now you know.
So I'm very turned off by that and scenes like that. But I can't hate on it. This is what I tell people all the time. They come into the gym and they, some people say, yeah, I'm shopping around at gyms. I've looked at this gym. I've looked at that gym. I was like, oh, cool. There's a place where you belong. It might not be here, but like there's definitely a place where you belong. And I think that's the beauty of CrossFit or fitness or whatever we want to call it now, is there's places where everybody belongs. Some people don't like the rules or lack of rules that I have in my gym. And some people leave other gyms because they have stuffy, weird rules and they want to come to my gym to be free.
Right.
So like we're all free to create our own culture and people find where they belong. That's what I think is cool and magical about our space.
Yeah. Talk to me about when Messi went out there. How did that change the environment, or how was the environment during that time?
Well, so again, my growing up in Miami, only Cuban American kids, soccer did not exist. Wow. In me growing up in Miami, zero, very little bit soccer.
Interesting.
A little bit out west in
Sure.
West Miami when the Colombians started to come and the Venezuelans later started to come. A little bit. But soccer, Miami has always been a Miami Dolphins town,
Sure.
a Miami Heat town, and a Florida Marlins town. Baseball, basketball, and football. Soccer did not exist. With the influx of Venezuelans and Colombians, that started to change. And when Messi changed, that flipped everything on its head. It is now a soccer town.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That much power, huh? To like really change the culture.
Dude,
like
now there's like soccer facilities that
Dang.
never existed in Miami ever. I know that sounds crazy because Miami's such a heavy Latin culture,
Sure.
but Cubans don't play soccer.
that. Right. Interesting.
So like soccer was very foreign to me, to us. Like I never grew up watching soccer at all. It was football, basketball, baseball. That's it.
How were the times of LeBron James when he was with the Heat?
I don't like LeBron.
Did you like him then?
No.
Wow. Even though his contribution?
No, man. I'm a 2006 Dwayne Wade, Shaq. That's my team.
Oh, Wade and Shaq, huh?
What?
Wow.
I got sober that year.
Wow.
And I watched every game, and like that was a higher power for me too. And if you can't tell, a little bit of a hater in some
That's
ways.
cool, it's cool,
I'm
cool.
judgy.
This is real.
And like LeBron's like LeBron, like that's not the the GOAT is Jordan.
Right.
That's my GOAT.
No,
that's like
yeah,
my era
yeah.
growing up. So like LeBron threatened that, and like
Sure.
the way LeBron made the decision to go to South Beach and like those,
Sure.
I didn't like those moves. I didn't like those things. I'm grateful that my team won more rings, but D Wade is my guy. I'm a D Wade. I worship at the altar of
Dude, that's awesome, man.
yeah.
Dude, that's
I'm
cool.
a big Dwayne Wade fan.
And now talk to me about you. So you were there for so Wodapalooza. That's in Miami. That's like how far away is Wodapalooza where the event was at from South Beach?
Wodapalooza is pretty close to South Beach.
Sure.
15, 20 minutes with no traffic, 15 minutes away.
What got
it's right across the bay. I mean, technically, you can see where South Beach is.
What got South Beach its reputation?
I mean, South Beach reputation really, I would say, really came from like the Art Deco era first of South Beach. South Beach was like a retirement home before it got trendy and popular.
Oh.
And like what was really special and popular about South Beach in that era was the buildings, the aesthetic of South Beach. That Art Deco look and feel was very special, and I think that's what put South Beach on the map at first. But then it turned into a party town. Yeah. South Beach was, my whole growing up was a huge party town, even still to this day.
Yeah, wow, man. Okay, yeah, so now let's get into Wodapalooza. Like, you were involved in the planning phases of it from the beginning, or what was your involvement with Wodapalooza?
No, not from the beginning, So Wodapalooza was founded by some other guys in Miami, and we supported it as like a local event from the very beginning. We had people compete at the very first and at every Wodapalooza. The guys who founded Wodapalooza sold it to that company,
Loud and Live.
Mm-hmm. And then when that happened, Loud and Live hired me to be the director of programming.
Was that in 2017? 2016, 17?
2017, I believe. 2017, maybe even 2018.
Were you on that trip where all the programmers came?
Yep.
We went to that. Where did we go?
We went to the Bahamas.
Yeah, we went to freaking Bahamas, bro.
Yeah.
And we went to that. I will never forget how we went on that island just to get those freaking...
the golf carts that we drove around the island, and
to get that, whatever that was, bro. But it was like in a shack, bro.
Yeah,
really.
We ate in a shack,
dude, and everybody just
a like salad there.
Got like just so much lime in that thing that my stomach, it's just stomach acid. I was like, oh my gosh, that was so funny, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so they bought it with Loud and Live. Is that when you then got more heavily involved?
Yeah, that's when I got really involved. I was involved prior to, but via Progenics.
Yeah.
So that's when my, tenure started really with Wodapalooza, was through Progenics first. They were the title sponsors of Wodapalooza. So I was involved in all Progenics related Wodapalooza stuff. Then when that went away, they brought me on, like I said, to be the director of programming. So I was the director of programming for 2 full cycles of Wodapalooza. It was in the years when they bought the Granite Games.
Right.
When they attempted to do that event in Mexico, the Mayan Classic. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember something like that.
An event in Spain. Obviously, Wodapalooza. We started to plan out events in the West Coast. And I enjoyed my time there, but it really took me away from my gym.
Yeah, your gym.
It took me away from my son.
Sure.
I was traveling a lot. And really, I have a lot of love for those guys, but what I signed up to do there was to program.
Yeah.
And I found myself doing a lot more
than just
programming, being in circles that I really did not enjoy.
Oh.
I'm not into the athlete worship in the sport of fitness, and there was a lot of that happening in that space, and that's not for me. That's still not for me. I don't like that aspect of this. Right. I came up in a time where we're all very much equal.
Yeah.
And like the best in the world were just like me and you. We're a normal affiliate. And that changed so much. And I feel like that space had a lot to do with that. And I was just not really, I wasn't happy.
Right.
So I respectfully, right before COVID, I decided this is no longer for me. I want to fully focus and dial in on my gym. So I stopped working with them. Mm-hmm. But it was really, I learned a lot. I met a lot of great people. I had a lot of great opportunities working for them. It was fun. It was cool.
With your son, as you said that you were noticing you were being absent for a lot of his, as he was growing older, and you're like, oh man, I'm becoming absent. How was the co-parenting part? How did you guys alternate your schedule between you and
tough? So co-parenting at first was really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we needed a therapist to
Yeah.
inject and to help us facilitate and figure that out. Very happy with how things are now. My son lives with me full time.
Okay.
And I'm incredibly grateful for all the opportunities I've had with him, and we co-parent great now.
Awesome.
But it was definitely a struggle early on. Dude, I was in my late 20s.
Yeah.
I was learning so much about myself and
Right.
life. I had my son pretty early on, younger than where most of my friends start to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I was learning about business and being a man
Yeah.
and being a father
Right.
all at the same time.
It's a lot, man.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Okay, cool. And
I got married young,
Right.
first time, so.
sure. Now, how involved is your son with what you do?
Incredibly. I mean, my gyms are run by my family.
Wow.
My dad is in the gym every day. My mom is in the gym every day. And not just working out, like cleaning, helping. Like my
Nice.
brother's there every day. My girl's there every day.
Right.
And all of my coaches are, I'll tell you something in a second, but all my coaches are like part of my family and my crew and my best homies.
Yeah.
The same guys that you met at that first Wadapalooza that you competed at in 2016 or whatever that was are the same guys that are at my gym today.
Wow.
That guy that I mentioned, Sean Velez,
Mm-hmm.
who was my boot camp instructor in treatment in 2006, is now my business partner.
That's awesome.
And worked for CrossFit Gymnastics for several years. That's Soul Sean. I met him in rehab, and now my best friend, and we take over the world together at Team Soul.
Man, wow, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah,
And
crazy how that.
that's amazing. I always have to get this 2016 Wadapalooza story off my chest. That frustrates me because that was the year that actually it was me, Nicky Rankar, and Wes Pyatt.
Wow.
Do you remember that?
Of course.
So we were actually, no lie, we were in, because that's the team that had the Smith brothers together, and that's when Froning had a team with his people, and bro, we were on track to win it. Actually, going into, and then there
That
was
was the assault bike.
there was an
Tina Hills year.
there was an event that had like one person had to do 7 legless rope climbs, one person then had to do 7 squat cleans at 285, and then one person had to do 14 alternating dumbbell squat snatches with a 100-pound dumbbell. It was like the second to last event.
That was heavy back then.
Yeah, that was heavy back then. And because we were tied, I think there was we were in that contention for first. There was like a tie happening, and then we're like trying to figure out, okay, who's going to do what section? And Rankar's like, and what was Nicky Rankar known for?
Cleaning.
Bro.
Super strong.
So he's like, hey, I want to do the rope
Get the
climbs.
biggest clean out of any.
I want to do the legless rope climbs. And Wes and I were like,
What?
I don't think that's the best place to put you in, man. Maybe I think you and I should move the barbell and let Wes do the legless. He's like, no. I've been really practicing them. I can do it. It's going to be no problem. And Wes and I were like, Wes, do you got the dumbbell snatches 100? Because I can go touch and go with that weight. I was confident. In any of those 3, but I was like, hey, either put me in the barbell or put me in the dumbbell. And Wes most likely should probably go on the rope. He's like, no. So we're like, okay, totally fine. 5 legless rope climbs in, then Rankar fails his rope climb, and he just blew up.
Wow.
And
That was
so
the final?
It was that one, and then that led into one more event.
That sounds like what has a programming.
Yeah,
Over-programmed.
It had one more event after that, but it just completely.
Sounds about right.
Because I think it was like at a certain time, then the last workout started. So we ended up having a 3-way tie for 4th, I think. It was something ridiculous, but then at that point, so we ended up getting 4th place. It was so bad, man, but that one took us out completely. And I remember I became very bitter after that with the Rankar. And even Wes and I felt it too. We were just like,
I haven't heard that name or wow, so long.
because it was just like we weren't expected to win. Because their team had won it the year before. It was like Rankar, Wes Pyatt, and somebody else. But then I subbed in for that other person, and that was such a huge bummer, man. But it was a fun event. I had a great time. That was like when I was heavy in competing mode. But ever since then, I was just Anytime I hear a Rankar's name, it hurts me. It hurts me. But anyway, he's a good dude. Nice, full a lot of energy. But yeah, so I wanted to get back to. So your son's heavily involved in your guys' community, and
So let me say something about my son. My son, we have a youth weightlifting club at our gym as well. My son's competed at nationals.
Wow.
My son's lifted in several different weightlifting meets. My son does CrossFit in our gym 3 times a week. We also have jiu-jitsu in our gym as well.
Cool.
Yeah, my homies from Ground Game Theory have an amazing no-gi submission grappling program that they run out of Seoul. My son does jiu-jitsu with them as well. Aiden's in the gym all day. Aiden's born and raised in that gym.
wow,
Can answer the phone, can take your information down. Like, that boy knows everything.
that's special, man. That's got to be such a cool feeling, man.
I mean, we really are like a family business.
That's amazing.
An operation, yeah.
Where now you talk about the culture there. It's very grungy. It's very like DIY-ish, super cool. Talk to me about your tats, because I saw a post on your Instagram. You're like, before CrossFit Soul, it was like a Woody with like no tats.
No tattoo.
And then afterwards, people are all tatted. What was your first tattoo?
My first tattoo was this chick in a martini glass.
Why?
I don't know. It's like a piece of traditional tattoo flash.
Sure.
And man, look, I don't really get tattooed much anymore.
Okay.
Not because I don't like tattoos, because they hurt.
Yeah, they hurt. Oh yeah.
Yes, and you get to a point where you only have really gnarly spots open, ribs and kneecaps and feet and stuff that is very painful.
Sure.
But I got very heavily tattooed very young, and I made a lot of mistakes.
Okay. Do you feel like some of them were mistakes?
Absolutely.
Like, which one would you be like, oh man, this was a mistake?
The one that I just said, the absolutely terrible. It looks like I got this in World War II, bro.
Wow.
Yeah. So my message to anybody getting tattoos is, first of all, stop going around asking for discounts for tattoos. They're going to be on you forever.
Well, yeah.
You want to pay top dollar for something you're going to wear on your skin forever. I don't understand why people go into tattoo shops asking for discounts and walking out when the tattooer is charging too much.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, so that's wild.
Recently, Miranda said something funny. She was like, we're talking about tattoos, and she's like, what do you think the modern day tramp stamp is? And the answer to that was
The finger tattoos.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think, because she brought up, she saw somewhere on Instagram that it's all this generation now looking like they took their stickers from a water bottle.
Yes.
Put them on. Have like little stickers everywhere.
And it's like the weird little finger fine. It's all the fine liney stuff. It's the wispy stuff. It's honestly, it's the stuff that in 10 years is going to look like it's not even.
Well, it made me, because my first tattoo was the street parking thing here. Oh. And then after that, I'm glad she brought that up. I mean, I only have one. I have another one, actually. I put the cross here.
Cool.
Over the important dates, like when we got married and the 3 births of our sons. But that's it. Like, I'm good. But I thought that was so funny, because when she said that, I was like, oh man, is this a sticker? Oh my gosh.
No, that's not.
Yeah.
I think it's those like fine liney wispy tattoos and the weird finger tattoos and stuff like that. That's definitely the modern day tramp stamp.
Oh man. Okay, good. Now
weird random numbers and stuff.
Sure.
And,
man. Okay, cool. So where do you feel, we'll kind of finish it off pretty soon, from where you started with CrossFit to where it's at, how do you feel about that? Like, what is it about the most current states that has been going on and how you see the community that kind of breaks your heart a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does break my heart a little bit. It doesn't have the magic it once had. You and I were having a conversation earlier today about like CrossFit in the garage, and that was the magic for me. For me, that's CrossFit.
Sure.
My gym, I have AC now in my gym. We're in a plaza, but it's still a garage gym.
The second gym that you opened up?
No, like the Miami gym.
The Miami gym.
Moved a few times.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Yeah, so like we've upgraded, but
you're in a plaza with AC?
Yeah,
dang, bro. Wall mounted or HVAC?
HVAC, bro. Yeah, big time. but
Sure.
you still walk into my gym and it feels like an affiliate. It feels like a gym. Like we still have whiteboards in my gym.
Nice.
Like that's for me. That's the CrossFit that I love, that I fell in love with. So like, how do I feel about that? I feel great because like I've kept it as authentic and as genuine as humanly possible, and I share that same original message about CrossFit with my staff, my team, my coaches, my employees, my clients. Every opportunity I have to open my mouth, I talk about Greg, I talk about OG, I talk about, the formative years of CrossFit. How do I feel how the big thing has progressed now? I don't love it. Like I told you, I wish it was more amateur. I wish the competitive space of CrossFit would embrace its amateurness. Because that's where I think it's the most beautiful.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's my opinion on it. Some of the stuff that's happened the last few years, always consistently changing the format. I feel like CrossFit's almost lost its identity.
Sure.
I'm a big supporter of Greg. I that's just the era that I grew up in. But I'll also tell you, there's a flaw when the thing that we're following can't survive without one person.
There's a huge flaw. Yeah.
Yeah. That's something to consider.
Yeah.
With everything that has happened with the games in the last year, or in the last 3 months or whatever it is, people are like, can the games continue with or without Dave Castro? Well, if the success of the CrossFit Games is contingent upon if Dave Castro can be there or not, we're in trouble.
Right.
It's in trouble. It shouldn't be contingent upon just one person.
Right. I don't know if you got a chance to see Miranda's one of Miranda's recent podcasts that she did in her car.
It's great.
Where she just talked
So
about like,
good.
hey, like we have to draw a fine line between the CrossFit Games and CrossFit, and I think people have really blurred the lines. And now you have Glassman finally came out with his I think his non-compete kind of was up, so he started MetFix.
Yeah, the Broken Science.
With the Broken Science Initiative. So that's it looks like people are starting to. There's a need, and people are missing that. And that's great. I think that we can all rejoice in a lot of these entities still continuing to promote fitness, and we just hope that they can get back to the meaning of why it all started and why we're out here doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
What for you has allowed you to, like, when you saw us with street parking, what kind of what allowed you? Why are you here? Like, what made you like rally behind what Miranda and I created?
So I have always been a supporter of street parking from its inception, since like you guys were doing workouts in the parking lot with a dumbbell, and like Miranda was working at Costa Mesa, and I was traveling to California a couple times a year to hang with Chris and all the homies, and seeing what you guys were starting to do. Like for me, that is the energy of how I fell in love with CrossFit. It's simplicity, like the hard work ethic in a simple, digestible setting, I think is magical. And like you guys have not only made fitness or kept fitness authentic and simple, but like, dude, look at that board we're sitting in front of. Like you guys have also created a community around it.
Yeah.
And then there's another aspect of it too, where I'm a brand guy. I like cool shit.
Right.
And like, you guys have made the brand look so cool and so clean.
That's awesome.
It makes me like wanna wear it. It makes me wanna do it. There's not many brands in our space that have kept me engaged and have kept me looking at what they're doing for as long as you guys have.
That's awesome, man. Well, a lot of that has to do with the team. Chris, just being the designer he is, man, and like really understanding that with Miranda's vision, with like what we each one of us like. Yeah, it truly is a puzzle, and fitting amongst each other, and so that's cool. That's really cool to hear.
The family aspect. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I'm not done.
That's cool.
The family aspect of what you guys have done is also magical to me as well. Last time I came here and I went to your guys' house, and I see the kids jumping around the rig,
Yeah, sure.
flipping around, and Danny, look how long I can hold up to the pull-up.
Yeah.
Danny, look, I'm gonna walk with this kettlebell. Like, it's feel like it's me with my son and my kids, and like I look at your guys' social, and it's so family driven, but you're all so still fit. So like to me, all the questions you asked about like the original competitive days of CrossFit, like that's kind of what you guys are creating. I know it's not a competition.
No, yeah,
I know you
yeah.
guys don't push competitiveness,
Yeah.
but you push fitness.
We push fitness for sure.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
so
cool.
like, and that was the true original spirit of CrossFit. It's
Yeah.
like we can take this very complex, loaded message of fitness and nutrition, and people have so many questions and hydration, just all this stuff. But street parking has a way of like simplifying it.
Yeah.
So like everyone can hear it.
Yeah.
And
That's why I'm glad that you were able to pick up on that, and street parking has gotten, it's interesting. It has and maybe this is just a Reddit crew. Who knows? Which also you got to take that with a grain of salt. And but yeah, I think for myself, what I'm trying to do is help empower the community of men around here as well. To kind of, Miranda and I always joke around that street parking is like the rehab of CrossFitters.
yeah, dude. Sure.
Hey, we got to bring it back to the basics, and especially like because she carries all that knowledge. I've learned so much from Miranda as well, and it has helped me kind of understand the reason behind why we're doing what we're doing. Because when we started, I was in heavy competitive mode. She already kind of was phasing out because of her injury and stuff like that. Then we had our family and everything, and how we've gotten through a lot of our tough times. Even recently, but we always continue to let fitness be something that keeps our bodies strong.
Yeah.
When our spirits are weak.
It's almost like there's a greater purpose.
Yeah.
And like you guys have built a community on top of all of that.
Yeah, dude, it's been, man, it's taken its toll, but but we're grateful for it, man. We really are, and we know now more than ever how important it just continues to solidify what we're trying to do is just bring people back to like, hey, why we do what we do with fitness, and that's cool that you're able to pick up on that, and we're just grateful now, even for that you're here, and I'm going to be aiding and helping with some things that we have in the future. So I hope we'll have to wrap this up because I know she's calling me a little bit. I got to go meet with the kiddos. We could talk for a while, man.
Yeah, dude, I feel that.
But I'm grateful for you, man, and I hope the community really gets to know you with this story. And thanks for your vulnerability and all of that too. So yeah, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate every second of it. Any chance I have an opportunity to work and to stay busy and do more and be part of the community, like that's all I want to do.
Awesome.
Always. So I really appreciate you giving me the chance to talk and to do my thing, brother.
Appreciate you, my brother.
All right.